morning, October 31st, 2021. I'm just always giggling because I never know what day it is. Um, my name is Douglas Griffin. This is my Bible study class. No, it's my Sunday school class because it's Sunday. Duh. And we are in the book of, oh, good, it's working. Yay. I finally did those updates. We are in the book of Genesis. We've been here since March. Started in Genesis chapter 1. We've gone all the way through. We're in Genesis chapter 43, so we're almost done. Um, we're dealing with Joseph. Actually, we're dealing with Joseph and Judah. I know Joseph feels like he's the star of this whole section and what he went through, but this is about Judah and why he was chosen for his line to be the line that the Messiah came from. That's the line we're following throughout the rest of the Bible. Just like Noah had three kids, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Shem, the Shemites, or the Semites, what they later became to be called, he was the father of the Hebrew children. And so even though the other lines are mentioned, we follow them all the way to Abraham, and we follow Abraham, Isaac, Jacob to his 12 sons, and we're ultimately going to follow Judah. Joseph still will play a part in his descendants. Joseph's descendants became kings in the north. So once they finally come back to Palestine, which is Israel, today's Israel, the 12 tribes were spread out, and there after David there was a fight, and there were 9, not really 10. I always say 10 and 2. It's really 9 and 3. There were 9 tribes that followed the kings of the north, and those were all the descendants of Joseph. And then there were 3 tribes that followed Judah, right? The kings of the north eventually were captured and scattered, and they became the lost tribes of Israel. So that's what you get for following Joseph. But Judah stayed strong, and that's where the Messiah comes from. So these chapters we're reading are really about why Judah, how Judah ended up being the one that God chose. And it's not an arbitrary decision. Again, in those days when there's no television or magazines or anything to influence you, your family philosophy is passed down from son to grandson to great grandson, because there aren't any other influences unless you're living in a wicked country where they worship idols, and that might influence you. But other than that, the family values of that particular brother were passed down. Simeon had his values, Reuben, Levi, they all had their values. And God said, Judah's the one that I want to teach his children and train his children, because I'm going to make them the kings over Israel, and the Messiah is going to come from them. So this is what this is about. Why God picked Judah and not Joseph? Because Joseph's daddy was sure he was going to pick Joseph. It's not who God picked. So we're in Genesis chapter 42. Well, no, actually we're in Genesis chapter 43, but I want to read the last part of 42 because it's very significant. Joseph, his daddy's favorite, as we know, sold to slavery. He's in Egypt. He ends up in front of Pharaoh, interprets his dreams. Joseph's big on dreams. And he predicts there's going to be a famine, 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. So now they're in the middle of the famine. It's the second year. And Joseph's brothers have shown up. They have no idea it's Joseph, right? No idea who they're looking at because he looks so different. And it's been 15 years, no, because he was 30. So it's been 22 years since they've seen him. So he looks totally different. Plus he's speaking Egyptian. That helps. And they're bowing down to him. And I just want to get this straight again, just remind us that, because so many people, they lionize Joseph like he's this wonderful person. This is all about Joseph not recognizing what God was doing. When his brothers came in and bowed down to him, he should have said, oh, this is exactly like my dream. That's why I was sent into slavery and worked for Potiphar and in prison, so I can end up here in Pharaoh's, so I could bless my family and save them and give them everything they need. God is so smart. He knew this famine was coming and he sent me ahead, but he didn't say that. It took him a while to recognize that. Now, the good news is God's will was still happening, but sometimes it takes us a while to recognize God's will. And this points out why. These are the roadblocks where we don't recognize what God is doing in our lives. It does not stop God, but it causes dissonance for us. We're frustrated, we're stressed, and we're fighting against it, and we're not moving as quickly as we should. Once we know, oh, God did this. This is not some horrible thing. This is God. Then we can more fully cooperate and go, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go along with the flow, and our lives are easier. It took Joseph a while because there were three stories he had told himself about his past that, and we tell ourselves the same stories that were blocking him. But there are three times Joseph cried, and each because he would hear something from his brother that changed the narrative in his head, changed the narrative that he had, made up. And so, oh, that's why God did this. Oh, that's what I thought. And he would weep because he only had his own head. He had no one to run these ideas by. Once he was sold off into slavery, he's alone in Egypt. And then you tell yourself, my family, they're all dead, or they all hate me. And there's no one to say, that's not true. So he had written an incredible story, not surprisingly, because he innocently went up to see his brothers. His father sent him, and to his shock, they grabbed him and threw him in the pit, and he had no idea that they were angry at him and sold him off to slavery. And so, wow, I guess my whole worldview is different. They must have hated me. And there's a couple things. So there's three times he cried. The first time is because he heard them say, we heard his crying. We heard him call out to us, and we did not answer him. And that's why God is punishing us. And he wept because he did not know if they heard him, because they sat down and had dinner right next to the well where he was. And he's crying and screaming and let me out. Oh my God, please. Nothing. And a lot of us get that feeling. I'm crying out to God and nothing. And we tell ourselves the story, okay, either God doesn't hear or doesn't care, or he's numbing himself. He sees what's going on and he doesn't really care. And we'll cry sometimes when we find out, oh my God, God did know about that. God did, somebody will surprise us with a gift, or, here's some money. You go, oh my God, my rent was due. And it makes us cry because we thought God didn't hear. God, or God knew my rent was due and was not planning on doing anything about it. And then we find out, oh no, God had this worked out all along. You go into work and your boss surprises you, or somebody just surprises you with some sort of gift, and you cry because you had told yourself a certain story. No one cares. Or this is I'm gonna fail, and your story wasn't true. And so that's what happens the first time Joseph cries. They actually did hear my cry. I thought they didn't hear. I thought God doesn't hear. But look how God is working things out. My brothers are here right in front of me. He still does not trust them. He doesn't know if they are lying to him, because apparently they've been lying to him all along in his mind. No, we love your stories, Joseph. No, they never said that, but he thought that they love these stories. So he doesn't know if he can trust them. They come down and say, yes, we still have a brother. Our father's still alive. They could be lying. So he sends them off at first, because that's his second reason he's going to cry. Um, Later on in the story, is because he finds out that Benjamin actually is still alive. And because sometimes we think that God doesn't care about the things that are important to us, that God's going to give us this future that we don't want or don't like. Yes, I know God's in charge, but God's going to make me do some terrible thing that I don't want to do, because God doesn't really know the real me. And Joseph's thinking, I love Benjamin, and he's my only family that's left. My mother died, and they probably have killed him. So to find out that he's still alive, that God somehow preserved him, is a shock to him. So he weeps because, wow, God does know what's important to me. He does really, right, care. So there's three times that Joseph cries, and we want to, and it took the third time, which we'll get to in a week or so, to really break him and for him to go, oh, now I get this whole thing. And God wants to do the same thing in our lives. He wants to break those things, that story we've been telling ourselves that causes us to be angry or depressed or withdrawn or shy or whatever it is, to realize, oh no, I should be moving in what God is doing. God is on my side, and all this was set up for my good, and it is all going to work out. So that's what's going on in Joseph's part. He has sent his brothers away to see, are they wonder if they're going to bring back Benjamin or not? Is Benjamin alive? And not trusting them, like thinking, they're probably lying. Just in case, I'm going to keep one brother here, and you guys go back and bring your brother back here. But Joseph's thinking, just in case they do not come back, let me give them all their money back. Let me give them everything and fill their sacks, because they may never come back. They could be lying because they don't know I'm just some Egyptian ruler. They don't know I'm Joseph. And so, because originally he was going to keep them all and then just send one person there, and he said, well, that's not good. That one person will never come back. That person will probably be killed on the way because it's just one person. So, so I'm just going to keep one person and I'll send them all. So he does. He sends them all and says, if there really is this other brother that you say, bring him back. So I just want to start from the end of Genesis chapter 42. Verse 36 says, and Jacob said to Jacob, their father, said to them, you've bereaved me. Joseph is no more. First of all, said, you have bereaved me because I left Joseph in your care and he's dead. Yeah, because they think he's dead. And then now Simeon is gone. Now, by the way, Simeon was chosen, let's remind us, because he probably was the instigator of the whole thing. That's why. We know this from how he instigated the whole incidents with Dinah, Simeon, and Levi, which is the other story, why Simeon descends and Levi eventually ascends, even though they were both guilty of killing the person who raped their sister and the whole town. Somehow Levi ends up becoming the priestly people, and Simeon ends up just disappearing into history. So what we're going to be reading coming up is going to show us why all these things happen. But anyway, they kept Simeon because Simeon was the instigator, sent all the other brothers back, and they're saying he wants Benjamin. I'm not going to give you Benjamin. So he says in 42:36, Jacob their father said to them, you have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you want to take Benjamin? All these things are against me. Like, they don't agree with me. They're scratching my spirit. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, kill my two sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. Which is not... So Reuben, again, is trying to be noble, and I'm the leader, and I'm trying to get back in my father's good graces. But what he's telling him is crazy. Kill my grandsons if I don't, if Simeon is dead. Like, how's that going to help? Now my grandsons are dead and Benjamin is dead, and so you're crazy. But it's because Reuben is trying, but that's not his gift. Leadership is not his gift, even though he was the firstborn. And we have this whole thing about the firstborn that we made up. God didn't make it up. God didn't say, and all firstborns shall be leaders, and that's not what it says. So just because he was the firstborn, that was not his gift. In fact, his father in Genesis 49, when he's praying for Reuben, says, Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength. You were the firstborn. But he says, unstable as water, you shall not excel. Because I could trust you as much as I could just stand on this water and see if it's going to hold my weight. You're unstable. That's not your gift. So he says to him in Genesis 42:38, and we're just finishing this chapter and then we'll go on to the next. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead and he is left alone. Like, that's it. His mother's dead, his brother's dead. No. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. It would just kill me. So no, he's not going to go with you. Done. Sorry, we're just going to have to starve. Okay, so Genesis chapter 43, verse 1 says, now the famine was severe in the land, talking about the land of Israel, and it came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt that their father said to him, go back, buy some food, because now they're still starving, and God's doing this on purpose, extending the famine. They're not cursing the devil, or God's not saying, just pray that the famine stop. God's already told them how long it's going to be. And it's all for a purpose. So Judah spoke to him, not Reuben. And this is the beginning of the ascension of Judah, where we start to see the change in him. Judah spoke to him, saying, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother's with you. So it won't do any good. We can go down and try to buy some food, but unless Benjamin is with us, and Joseph's in charge. They didn't know it was Joseph, but that man is in charge of the food. So it won't do any good. So you have to decide, Father, should we all starve? Which you were good with at the beginning of the season. And we're all just starving. And we say things like that, Let it happen. I don't care. But then when it happens, we all, oh, Jesus. So now that they're starving, you have to make a choice. If you want food, we have to take Benjamin. So Israel said, why did you deal so wrongfully with me as to tell the man whether you had still another brother? It's like, I don't even get it. How did he even know there was another brother? How did this come up? So they said to him, all of them, right? Well, the man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him according to these words. Now, that's not entirely true. Joseph knew better than to just out of nowhere say, hey, do you have a father? Is there another brother? Because he's trying to hide his identity. So that's not how it happened. Joseph just kept accusing them of being spies. They volunteered the information, which actually was God. Because if this information doesn't come out, then Joseph doesn't do all these things, and they don't end up in Egypt and him rescuing him. He just gives them food and they leave. But fortunately, they did mention that Benjamin was still alive. So that's why all of this is happening, because Joseph found out. So, because back in Genesis 42, in verse 12 and 13, it says, but he said to them, this is Joseph, no, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land. Meaning, in the north, we have no defenses. In the north, we have no fences up and walls. In the north, I don't know why, because Egypt had walls around the south and the east and the west, but not up to the north. And so some intruder could come from the north, which happened a few times. And so they called it the nakedness of the land. You come to just check out our defenses. And they said, no, your servants are 12 brothers. We're not spies. We're actually brothers. And the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. So there was 12 of us all together. One died, and one's with our father. So they volunteered this information. He didn't trap them and say, do you have a brother? But they're not going to admit that to their dad and say, well, actually, we were stupid. We shouldn't have mentioned him. Because it's like, how could we know, which is true, that he would be interested in this brother? Why would he be? So back to Genesis chapter 43, verse 7, could we possibly have known that he would say, oh, well, bring your brother down, which is true. But again, God had them say that because he had more work to do. And sometimes there are things we say accidentally. And God has set that up. The Holy Spirit is working on us, and we go, oh, you know what? Let me pick that person, or I think we should go down here. And we don't know it's God. But God knows it's him, and God's smart, and he knows what situations to put us in so that we end up doing his will. Because God's will is always done. There's not a situation, even though it's taught differently. It's taught like sometimes the devil's will is done and sometimes God's will is done. But God is in control. And so he knows what's always going to happen. Now, the devil may speak to us about how to interpret what's going on. The devil may tempt us to try to block God, but God's will ultimately always happens, right? So they're saying, how could we know when we said accidentally that he was our brother? How do we know? So then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the lad with me, Reuben had already tried, right? Send the lad with me, and we will rise and go that we may live and not die. Both we and you, and also our little ones. So he's saying, if we go, then we won't all die. So if you're trying to protect Benjamin, we're all going to die. But send him with me. And parents know their kids. And they know this one's really good at this, and because they saw you from the time you were a baby, they know. Oh, you were always taking things apart, putting things together, and oh, you just love to paint. I mean, they know. So they're not going to give the painter the job of fixing the car, and they're not going to give the one who's always taking things apart the job of writing that song, because that's not what. So when Judah says it, he listens. Um, in fact, the other brothers listen to Judah. Judah is the one that people listen to. In Genesis 37, verse 26, once they had all decided, okay, so here's the order. Simeon led them in saying, let's kill the brothers. It does not say Simeon led them, but earlier, 2 chapters earlier, Simeon and Levi led them in saying, let's kill all those Shechemites. And then when they decided who to keep behind, and who, in Egypt, who possibly was going to die and they'll never see again, they all said Simeon. And so he probably, because he's the instigator. And it says that in when he's praying, when Jacob is praying over Simeon, he says, you're a killer. And okay, so Simeon is probably the one that said, let's kill him, because that's how his father prophesied over him anyway. You're violent. But Reuben said, no, let's not kill him. Let's just leave him in the pit. And they went, okay, that sounds good. Because Reuben's plan was to come back once they all had gone to sleep and get him out of the pit. And bring him back to daddy and say, I saved him. Love me, daddy. But Judah said, hey, guys, why are we going to just let him die in this pit? That will mean that we killed him. Let's sell him to somebody. Oh, well, let me just read it to you. Genesis 37, verse 26. So Judah said to his brother, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brothers listened and said, oh, okay. Because Judah, they would listen to. They had Judah had this way. That made all the sense in the world. So, so Judas kind of saves his life, and Judas part of God's plan, because Joseph was supposed to go to Egypt so that God could save their family, and have all this grain stored up, 5 years worth of food stored up, so they can live and not die. So when Judah says, hey, we should do this, they're listening. Genesis 43 verse 9 says, I myself will be surety for him. This is what Judah's promising, different than Reuben. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. And he is saying, this is going to be on me. I will take the sin. I will take the blame. His life I will take on, and you required it of me. So anything bad, let it come on me. I will take the consequences. It's all going to be on me. And this is the beginning of Judah actually caring for someone else's life more than his own. And that's the quality that's going to be taught, that Judah's going to teach his children, and his children teaches his children, his children, that you lay down your life for someone else. So that's not what Reuben did. Reuben said, kill my grandchildren if I don't bring him back. So, but Judah says, no, my life will be surety for his. I'll take the blame. I'll take the consequences on me. And that kind of attitude is what God was looking at, to say, okay, I'm going to pick Judah, right? That's just the beginning. I mean, it grows from there. This started back in Genesis 38 with that whole Judah and Tamar thing. Remember, Judah had 3 sons. Right after they sold Joseph into slavery, the very next chapter is all about Judah. It's like, what is this chapter doing here? And I read commentaries 5 or 6 different famous commentaries, and they're all going, we don't know why this chapter is here. Why don't you know? Judah is the star of the story. It's his line we're going to be tracing. So what happens to Judah is very important. So Judah had 3 sons, and Tamar married the first one, and the first one died. So this brother is supposed to take Tamar and make sure she has kids, make sure his brother and his brother's kids get his his brother's family would get the credit, even though the second son, uh, his brother's kids would get the inheritance and the double portion. And he's like, no, I want it all for myself, so I'm not going to marry her and have children with her because all my stuff's going to go to him, and even though he's dead, and so he died because he's evil. So Judah promised Tamar to the third son. But when the third son was of age, Judah forgot because he didn't really care about other people at the time. Oh yeah, Tamar, whatever. So she remember she tricked him into having sex with him, and she got pregnant. And then they come and tell her, your daughter-in-law is pregnant. Who did this to her? And so she says, you did, and shows him, see, I took your ring. I took identified you so that you would know that it was you. And in Genesis 38:24, it says, so Judah acknowledged them, his stuff. Oh yeah, that is my stuff. You got it. And said, she has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her to Shelah, that's the third son, my son. And he never knew her again, but she's more righteous than me. I didn't keep my word. I promised her something, and then I didn't care. And that was the beginning of Judah changing. Like so him saying to his dad, I'm going to keep my word. I'm saying that Benjamin will live, and if not, I will take the blame forever. I'll give my life as surety for him. And no one other brothers were like, hey, if he dies, it's too bad. But Judah was different, and that change started back with Tamar. So, so 2 things going on again. We're seeing the ascendancy of Judah, and Joseph. We still think this is about Joseph, Judah and Joseph. This rivalry between Judah and Joseph went on for, okay, because it came out around 1000, 500 years. Rivalry between Joseph's descendants and Judah's descendants. Because after 500 years, around 500 BC, all of Joseph's descendants were scattered, and so the rivalry didn't exist anymore. But it went on for about 500 years. In fact, First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1 and 2 says, now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, he was indeed the firstborn, but because he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph. This is what the father did, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob did. Jacob said, I'm giving it all to Joseph, because he's still thinking the stories about Joseph. So do all these commentators. So Joseph, you get the double portion, right? His birthright was given to the sons of Joseph's, the sons of Israel, so that the genealogy is not listed according to birthright. So when you list these things in order, it's not, Reuben being first is not because he got the birthright. It's just because he's the oldest son. He says, yet Judah prevailed over his brothers. So Joseph got the birthright, but Judah prevailed over his brothers, and from him came a ruler, although the birthright was Joseph's. So he's telling us the ruler came from from Judah, but the birthright began to Joseph. So there was this tension because Jacob did not understand who God was choosing, right? And so you're going to have this Judah-Joseph dynamic going on for 500 years. Who's really in charge? Okay, so back to Genesis chapter 43. So Judah's saying, I'll take the surety. I'll give it all to me. I'll take all the blame. Again, a very Messiah-like thing to say. But he says, but if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned the second time. So he's saying, the guy sent us and said, bring the brother back. And so we should have probably have gone right back. But it's been 6 months that we ate up all the food, and now we're desperate again, or it's been a year, however long. And so it's going to look bad because we should have gone straight back if we were going to do it. So let's go now. Now, Genesis chapter 43, verse 11. So then their father said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Do this. If you're going to go back, listen, but take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry down a present for the man, a little balm, a little honey, some spices, some myrrh, some pistachio nuts, and almonds. This is what was growing in their region that needed very little water. Because remember, there's a famine because there's been a drought that's gone on for a couple of years now, no rain. But there's just a little bit of vegetation growing. So the pistachio nuts, the honey, all these things they had, it wasn't enough for their corn to feed their flocks, for their wheat and all that stuff. There wasn't enough water for that, but there was enough to grow some pistachio nuts and have some, some perfume. And so take this little mixture back with you. It says, and then take double money in your hand and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks, because perhaps it's an oversight. So yes, you're right. The man's going to be upset that you didn't come right back. Give him twice as much money this time, plus give him back the money that was in your sack, because maybe it was just a mistake, as opposed to he did it as a trap, because that was their fear. He put the money in our sack so that he has a reason to come and chase after us and kill us. So he says, maybe it's just an oversight, but give him this little present. Now that's a Jacob thing. Jacob doesn't trust that God has worked it all out. So make sure you have a little present and double money, because that's a Jacob thing. Jacob's still trying to learn, up until the day he died, that God has got things under control and you don't have to manipulate people. Jacob is the manipulator, right? I'm only going to get my birthright if I trick my dad into thinking I'm Esau. I'm only good, he's still the manipulator. In fact, because remember in Genesis chapter 33, when he was waiting to see his brother Esau, he hadn't seen his brother Esau in 20-something years. And he's thinking, Esau's going to kill me. Even though God said, go back, I got it taken care of. He doesn't trust him. So he sends out his servants with presents for Esau. Esau's on the way. In Genesis 33, verse 17, chapter 33, verse 17, it says, and commended the first group, saying, when Esau, my brother, meets you and asks you, saying, to whom do you belong and where are you going? Whose are these in front of you? Then you shall say, they are your servant Jacob's, and it is a present sent to my lord Esau. And that's why we're bringing these donkeys and these mules, all these things to you, my lord Esau. Make sure you say your servant Israel, and make sure you say my lord Esau. And behold, he's also behind us. So he commended the second and the third and all who followed the drove. So he's sending them out in droves. So like every 100 feet, there's going to be another one saying, and here's another present for you, because he's got to manipulate that person. He's got it. God can't fix it. Even though God said, go back, don't worry. It's like, I don't trust God. Let me grease this wheel just to make sure. So he says, and say, behold, your servant Jacob is behind us, for he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face. And then perhaps he will accept me. So the present went on over before him, but he himself lodged that night in the camp. And that's when he wrestled with the angel, because in his mind, he's still like, I'm going to get killed, and I'm still the little wimp who used to cook in his mama's tent, and that's his. And so that's why the angel wrestled with Jacob and let him win. He didn't. You can't. Please tell me, you can't beat up an angel. Mm-hmm. So an angel who just knocked out 500,000 troops with one wave of his hand, but Jacob somehow beat him. No, the angel lets him win so that he can feel like, and he tells him, you're no longer Jacob the deceiver. You're now Israel, because you are a prince with God, and I want you to think of yourself as strong. And that's how God wants us to see ourselves going to situations, not to be walking and telling everybody what to do. Yay, you bow down to me. But we walk in with the confidence knowing we got the biggest bully on our side, and God's on our side. And so we don't have to be nervous and scared. If God has sent us, then he's gone before us. He's already paved the way. Okay, Genesis 43, verse 13. So he says, take this present, take double money, take it. And he says, and take your brother also. And arise, go back to the man, and may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. But if I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. Meaning, I'm hoping this works out. But if it doesn't, then that's, if I'm bereaved, if I lose my son, Benjamin, then that's the best I can do. I can't tell God what to do. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Now, this is not a statement of quote unquote faith that we've been taught. We've been taught you've got to say it's going to work out and I shall be victorious, and because you're judged by every word that comes out of your mouth, and that is not Bible. That's not what the Bible is talking about. It's talking about you're judged by the words coming out of your mouth. The words that come out of your mouth that he's talking about is either you're saying Jesus is Lord or not, and you will be judged by those words, but not every anyway. Because the people in the Bible often said it may not work, and that didn't stop God from making it work. In Esther, remember in Esther? Okay, she marries the prince and of the king and of Babylon, the Persian king. I'm so sorry, the Persian king. After they've been in captivity for a while, but he doesn't know she's Jewish, and Haman tricks the Persian king, uh, Ahasuerus, into making this decree that everyone who bows down to anybody else other than the king must be killed. So this edict has gone out, and all the Jews are going to be killed. So her cousin Mordecai says, Esther, you should go in and talk to him. Now here's the problem: you don't just walk in on the king. If you go into his presence unannounced, 99% of the time you will die. 1 out of every 100 times he may hand you a scepter and say, okay, go ahead, you may speak, but you cannot predict that. 99% of the time he kills you. So you have to wait to be called. And he hasn't called her and said, come in and talk to me. So it's like, how am I going to talk to him unless he calls me? And he's like, just go on in. So he says to her in Esther chapter 4, verse 13, Mordecai told them to answer Esther in this way: do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. Because he says, he may not know you're a Jew now, but if you don't do this thing, he'll find out you're a Jew and you won't escape. So you're really saving your own life. It's not like you have a choice, he's saying to her. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. So if you don't go in and do what you're supposed to do, the Jews are not going to die out. God will send somehow somebody from another place. He says, but you and your father's house will perish because you had a chance to rescue them and you refused. So you see someone, and the Bible's very clear, who's in danger, and you don't warn them and you don't do anything. You go, oh, sorry, it's not my business. Then those consequences will come on you, because that's evil that you're perpetuating, right? So he's saying, okay, maybe you don't say anything. So God will save him another way, but you'll get the consequences of it. Yet, who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? He's saying this may be exactly why God arranged all this, so that I know you're scared. If I go in, 99% chance he's going to kill me. But he's saying, if you don't go in, you're not going to escape any different than the other Jews. He'll find out. Somebody will expose you. So you're going to die either way. So you might as well go, because this may be exactly why God called you in that situation. And sometimes we need to think like that. Why am I in this situation? Why am I here? Maybe God wants to use me. Maybe that's why he put me in this position. So I'm going to go ahead and speak up for what's right. Maybe that's why I'm in this position. So then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go, gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me. Neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. Again, fasting not to move God, but in case God speaks and says, don't do it, because I'm planning on doing this and we need to hear from God. So please fast. My maids and I will fast likewise. And then so I will go to the king. So if God doesn't stop me, I'm going to do it, which is against the law. But if I perish, I perish. And this is exactly what Jacob had just said earlier. If I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. If I perish, I perish. It's not the words of faith that we've been told. You must say the positive thing, because she said, hey, if I die, I die. And that didn't stop God. God didn't say, oh, you said a negative thing, so now I'm going to have to kill you. In 2 Kings chapter 6, the Assyrians had surrounded northern Israel. These are Joshua's I mean, yeah, Joshua's people, right? They're in the north because they're not supposed to be there, and Joseph's people, I mean to say, Joseph's descendants are not supposed to be king, and that's why they had so much trouble in the north. But the Assyrians had surrounded them, and they prevented them from getting food and supplies, and people are starving and dying to a horrible point. You may not know this story. In 2 Kings chapter 6, this woman comes up to the king because Elijah has said, do not go out against the Assyrians. God is going to deliver us. So the king is waiting for deliverance, and then people come to him. So the king says to her, because this woman comes there and she's all upset, what is troubling you? This is 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 28. Some of you may not be familiar with this. So the king says to this woman, what is troubling you? And she answered, this woman said to me, give your son that we may eat him today, and we'll eat my son tomorrow. Because they were starving, right? There's been no food, no nothing, and they don't know God is just about to deliver them. So, and people give up because they don't know. It's like, God's going to come through. Do not give up. Do not do that crazy thing. Do not do that crazy thing. But so this woman came and said, we'll eat your son today. We'll eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and ate him. And I said to her on the next day, give your son that we may eat him. But she has hidden her son because she ain't stupid. So, oh yeah, we'll eat your son first. Okay, that makes all the sense in the world. And then, well, where's your son? I don't know. Yeah. So now it happened when the king heard the words of the woman that he tore his clothes as he passed by on the wall. The people looked, and there underneath he had sackcloth on his body, like he's trying to show God how upset he is. Then he said, God, do so to me and more also if the head of Elisha, oh, so I was wrong, it was Elisha, not Elijah. And the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, remains on him today. Like, I'm going to kill him because he told me to wait for God, and God hadn't done nothing. 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 1. Then Elisha said, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord, tomorrow about this time, a seah of fine flour shall be sold for a shekel. He's saying, like, that's like a gallon of gas would be 20 cents. Like, what? And 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria. So there's going to be so much food flowing tomorrow. If you can just wait out tomorrow, that there'll be so much. And I told the people just to wait if they could have waited, but people don't panic, right? And they do nutty things. And just wait, because there'll be so much barley, so much wheat, so much flour, all the supplies will be, if you just wait one day. Okay, so all right, okay, I'll wait. So, 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 2. So the officer on whose hand the king leaned answered the man of God and said, look, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, could this thing be? And he said, in fact, you shall see it with your eyes, but you shall not eat of it. So you're going to see it, but because you and the king have this attitude, then you won't see of it. But you'll see everybody else doing it who believes. So I'm just skipping down to verse 3. Now, there were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate, and they said to one another, why are we sitting here until we die? If we say we will enter the city, the famine's in the city, and we shall die there. So again, the Assyrians were all around, right? And so they're blocking off any food from getting into the city. So, like, why are we just standing here at the gate? If we go into the city, there's a famine there, we'll die there. And if we sit here, we'll die. So now, therefore, come, let us surrender to the army of the Assyrians. If they keep us alive, we shall live. And if they kill us, we shall only die, So again, this is like, let's go and just give up. If they feed us, cool. If they kill us, we die. Again, it's another act of non-faith. If I perish, I perish. If I get bereaved, I bereave. If I die, I die. But I'm just going ahead and do this. Those are not the words we've been told to say. You must always say, it's going to be fantastic. Well, that's not true. So they rose at twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians and just turn themselves in and say, well, if they kill us, they kill us. And when they had come to the outskirts of the Syrian camp, to their surprise, no one was there. And the story just goes on. The Assyrians, God had scared them and they heard the sound of a huge army because he let them hear the sound of all the army of angels that were there. And they heard that sound and thought that Israel had this huge army. So Israel didn't have to go out and fight. God will fight your battles if you just do what he says. Stand still. If he tells you to fight, go fight. But he hasn't told you to fight, then you need to stand still because there's a choice. Because God's like, well, either I'm a fight or you. So you decide which one of us is going to handle it better. So if he hasn't told you to do anything, don't do anything. And sure enough, God fought the battle, and the enemy drove, and they left all their supplies and left all their stuff, and people were grabbing like, "Oh my God, there's so much food! I can't believe it." So it all worked out, but not because they were in faith, not because they were saying, "And tomorrow I shall have victory." God knew what He's going to do, and sometimes our words don't stop God. God's like, "Man, I was going to do it, but you said it may not work." So, and that stopped me. We can't stop God. Okay, the last one: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king. This is in Daniel chapter 3, verse 16. Because he's warning them, since you won't bow to me, I'm gonna have to send you to the fire furnace. And they said, Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fire furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, if he doesn't deliver us, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you've set up. So God might deliver us. He's certainly able to, but he may not. We're still not going to serve you because that didn't stop God from delivering them, right? And I'm just harping on this because sometimes we give people rituals and rules, and you must say it exactly this way, and you must do, and that's the only way God can work. And that's not, God doesn't work that way. We're trying to find out what God's doing and get ourselves in line with what God is doing. But it is taught that we tell God what to do. We declare a thing and it comes to pass. We say, today, God, I'm sending out my angels and you're going to make the Uber show up 5 minutes early, and you're going to do, we just tell God what to do all day. Some of you have never heard this, and so God bless you. You're thinking, why do people do that? But that's how it's taught. It's up to us to put it out there. But you see, many places in the Bible, that's not what they did. They said, this may not work. And that didn't stop God. So he's sending his son down there, and he says, okay, all you guys go. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I do not know if this is going to work or not. If I'm bereaved, but we'll try it. Genesis 43, verse 15. So the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hand, and they rose and went down to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. Now, there's a huge hall that he's in, like that everybody's there trying to get food. So they're there, but they're not like 5 feet from Joseph. And Joseph saw Benjamin with him. He said to the steward of his house. So he sees somebody with him that he hasn't seen in 23 years. It could be Benjamin. It could be somebody that just brought and grabbed. He doesn't know. So he says to the steward of his house, take these men to my home, slaughter an animal, make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon. So you take them to my house. Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. And they don't know why they're going to Joseph's house. Why are we here? We don't know what that means. Now the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house. Because Joseph hasn't explained to them, hey, I'm on your side. It's all okay. He's like, uh-oh, what did we do? This is going to be about the money. And they said, it is because of the money, which should be turned in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may make a case against us and seize us and take us as slaves with our donkeys. So they expected the worst because they had no idea this is Joseph. He could have revealed himself the first time, but he doesn't trust them. He's not testing them. He's not trying to bring them to repentance. He's already heard that they're repentant. He's already heard them say, it's all our fault that this is happening to us. But I've heard commentators say, look at Joseph. He just wants them. No, Joseph wants to have revenge on them. But he also wants to, he doesn't trust them. Is this really my brother? Is my father really alive? Are you? So I need to find out more because I don't trust these guys. Genesis 43, verse 19. Oh, so when they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, right, his head guy, they talked with him at the door of the house. Like, we're not even going to go in because he's about to kill us. So they wouldn't go in the house. They talked to him at the door, and they said, oh, sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food. But it happened, and we came to the encampment, and when we opened our sacks, and there each man's money was in the mouth of his sacks, like, and our money in full weight. So we brought it back to our hand, like we had no idea. We did not steal this money, because we know this is about the money, and it wasn't. And we have brought down other money in our hands to buy food, and we do not know who put our money in our sacks. We don't know how we got that money back. So it's like, go tell Joseph way ahead of time. But he said, peace be with you and do not be afraid. So this is Joseph's steward that Joseph has been teaching about God. So I don't mean to talk about Joseph like he doesn't know God. I'm just saying Joseph was not the chosen one to carry the line. Judah was. And this is how Judah ascended. What happened so that Judah got picked? That's what this whole story is about. So, but Joseph has taught his stewards about God. And he says, peace be with you. Do not be afraid. This is similar to like in Judges chapter 6, when Gideon has been wondering what he's going to do. Oh my God, I'm so afraid. And an angel showed up. And it says in Judges 6, verse 22, now Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord. And so Gideon says, alas, O Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. Now, no man has seen God face to face. He sent messengers, and it's okay to see a messenger, but Gideon's thinking, I've seen a messenger of God. And God's saying, no, if you actually saw me face to face, it would burn you up. So I can't let you see me face to face. So Moses, I'll put you in the rock and you can see me as I pass by. But if I actually looked at you with all that sin and you would just melt. So so Gideon's like, oh no, I've seen the angel of the Lord face to face. And he says, then the Lord said to him, peace be with you. Do not fear. You shall not die. Just calm down. Because that's what they're thinking, right? We're at the house of Joseph. He's going to kill us all right now at his house. Peace be with you. Peace be. Like in 1 Samuel chapter 20, when Jonathan and David had made a pact because Saul was going to try to kill David, and Jonathan like, I'm going to go find out if there's after you or not. Maybe he's cool that you're not there and it's cool. He says, so I'll let you know. You stay here. He says, then I will shoot 3 arrows to the side. This is Samuel 20:20. As though I shot at a target. Like you be out in the field waiting and I'm going to shoot 3 arrows. And if I say, and then I would send a lad saying, go find the arrows. And if I expressly say to the lad, look, the arrows are on the side of you. Get them and come on back. If I say to my lad, grab those arrows and come all the way back, then that's the sign to you to come all the way back. Then as the Lord lives, there is safety for you and no harm. And he goes on to say, but if I say the arrows are way far, do not go get those arrows, then that's a sign to you that you better bolt out of here. So then just know that as you live, there is safety, there is peace, and these comes at times when people are like panicked. God sends us peace. When all these people are at these points of like, oh my God, we're all about to die. God says, no, I've got this. I've got this. It's all okay, Gideon. I've got it. It's all okay, Esther. It's all okay, 3 Hebrew children. I've got you. Peace. So he's saying to them, don't worry. You can walk on in the house. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. So I'm ending there. So that he doesn't say, he's saying, I'm the one that gave you that money in the first place. He doesn't say who put it back in the sacks. He just says, your God has given you treasure. God has worked things out for you. You're looking at this like, oh no, this is a terrible situation that you're about to walk into. It's not. You think it is. We think it is. Oh no, this is so horrible. It's like, shh, don't worry. You can go on in the house. You can go on in. It's okay. There's somebody who's listening who like there's a situation you're about to walk into. You were thinking, oh no, this is the worst. This is the worst. God's gone ahead of you. He's going to work it out. And it looks bad. You've heard terrible things. You've seen terrible things. But God has gone before you. He's going to work it out. You can go on in the house. God's going to work it out. Okay, so I'm going to end there today. We'll start the rest of chapter 43 next week. Thank you again for listening in, and all of you who said hello. Oh, Heidi Smith and other people. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And you don't have to say hello. If you're listening, you don't have to say hello. So I know there's a bunch of people who say, I never say hello. That's fine. You just listen and then you go on. So I appreciate both. It doesn't matter if you say hello. I love people who say hello. I love people who don't say hello. So I will be in book of John on Wednesday. We're just starting the book of John. So if you're just tuning in, you know that we're just starting at the beginning and you won't be lost. And then we'll continue on from here in Genesis next week. Okay, thank you and God bless.